All right, welcome to Learning Designers as Designers. Ooh, we use the word twice, but it's okay because it has a reason. I would like to introduce Law to this LDP Live. Law started with Oppida as a graphic designer and then moved into learning design. So she is I guess, a learning design protege. We're moving from one to another. And so we thought we'd bring her into this one because obviously with that idea of design at the center point, she's got a lot to say. But I will kick us off just with this image because I think it's quite pertinent. When we think about the role, we are often, sorry, I'm just going to go share. Oh, hang on, slideshow. So can you guys see that?
Yep.
So most of our professional lives, we're kind of asked to play in that left side of the brain. So this image kind of really encapsulates that difference that we bring in and each one of us has. It doesn't matter what your art teacher told you, you are a creative, right? Everybody is creative. We are all creators, otherwise we wouldn't be here, because what we can imagine is what we can build. And humans have imagined the world that we have, and that's what we built. So we're all creators. So I still believe that unicorns probably do exist because we've imagined them. And one day we'll just wake up and we'll be able to see them. So there you go. Edmund, you might have a competition. So this picture really encapsulates that two sides of the brain that we work with. And one of the things I think has been missing a lot when it comes to the digital education space and the teachers transitioning and educators is the conversation about the necessary focus and I guess value that we need to place on this right side. So we may be working within a system that is very left and has rules and rigid, and it has, deadlines and people and but actually as a learning designer, you need to be able to step into the right side of your brain basically on demand. So when I started doing management consulting, I was actually, kind of education consulting, I was mixing up, I was consulting, doing strategy, meeting clients, and then doing splashes of learning design in there. And I remember struggling so much with trying to flip my brain throughout the day. And I put in all these little strategies to be like, okay, today I won't touch this, I will only do this. And then sometimes, our brains, we just try and do the easy thing. So it's easier just to open your emails and just kind of deal with them. Right. And it took years and years and years of training to know how to set myself up to move into the right side, to do my job as a learning designer. And it does take, have you heard of that switching cost that you have when you draw your attention and multitask? So they say it's 10 minutes if you're just multitasking anything. I swear it's at least half an hour when you're trying to move from right to left. Like the switching cost of that is huge, right? So that's one of the starting points that I like to talk about with people who haven't really kind of evolved into that role, is also to respect the necessary things they're going to need to do to set themselves up to be in that creative space. And to appreciate that designing a learning experience is not just a formula, right? We have some templates we use and we have some structures, but it's not a formula. It's something that you can kind of really get into. So in saying that, I want to just open the floor for any comments around what I just said. Has anyone got any lived experience they want to share, or any, rebuttal me if you've got another perspective, for sure.
I agree, switching brains, switching from the doing into thinking about how it's actually going to be done. Or the content. You look at obviously the content and then working out how that's actually going to get to the other side. Switching is certainly not moment to moment kind of thinking for me either.
It's something that a lot of subject matter experts for academics might struggle with. So that's another part of the LD's role, is to try and sort of visualize, or help them to visualize what a storyboard might end up looking like.
I think that's a really good point, Matt. I think, as a learning designer, you've got to play on both sides and be able to do that switch. And I think being aware, as Bianca said, of the cost of switching just sort of lends itself to the way that we organize our work and make sure that you're not sort of trying to do both, sort of planning for an activity and making it, you know, look appealing visually, is probably not something that you should do at the same time. That you should try and sort of plan an activity or plan a storyboard and then add to it. Yeah, so that's just a concept. Yeah.
And I think there's another complexity to it as well, because everyone's brain within this works differently. So whatever I imagine and I'm trying to communicate as this is what it looks perfectly in my head, and that's what I would like it to be as a final product. And then you as a designer on the other side need to understand it. And then you interpret this information and go, oh, this is the outcome. And I'm like, what? Completely know what I meant. Oh, wow, never thought of that. It's a funny added element where you think that everything is translatable or things can be easily explained while we have such different concepts for the same things.
Absolutely. Has anyone in the room, apart from Matt, ever had to manage, produce a video with somebody, like deal with a freelancer and produce a video? Have you had to do that, Katrina?
Yeah, sorry, it just cut out, and either I didn't freeze, but everyone else did, so I was like, it must be me. I find that my background as a chef, I think very holistically and tactile, and so I understand, like this very, very similar to what Magda was saying. I can visualize it in my head, how it needs to be for the end user, and it's kind of moving my way back to say, what does it like the mechanicals of it? Because I know the creative side, it's actually the opposite side. Trying to get that content down sometimes I think is a challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest things. And I'm sure Laura's going to touch on this when she speaks a little bit about her journey across, because going from graphic design. So the reason when we started working with Laura, you would remember Lucy, obviously, Magda. It's Magda. I keep saying it a little bit wrong, don't I? I'm so sorry. Magda. Lucy,
my joke to that is I ain't no Mitsubishi. Just remember that.
I ain't no what? I know
Mitsubishi Magna.
Oh yeah, that was my second car. We used to call it.
There you go. So don't think that when you think me.
Okay,
don't
right. You remember, because Austin Powers came out when I had that car, and we used to call it the liquid hot magma. The liquid hot magma from that movie. So everyone called my car the Magma, not the Magna. Anyway, side note, I never thought about that car for a very long time. Right, okay, let's move on. So again, let's talk about what we've just touched on, which is communication, right? So design is really an act of communication. So you have to, like what you just touched on, Katrina, is you've got to have a deep understanding of who you're designing to in order to then start to design. Which is why it's been quite interesting in the higher education space for the last few years, where, you know, especially it's probably more prevalent now. I think some of the philosophies around design thinking and persona development have become a bit more mainstream. But for a very long time there, you could walk into a higher education provider and say, so talk to me about your students, and they wouldn't be able to tell you much about them. And they weren't really considering what they knew about them for the design. And Matt has probably 100 stories of that when he was counseling these poor students. For their tiers of what they were getting dished up, right? And so as learning designers, we are at the forefront, we are communicators, and in saying that, we're designers. So, you know, this whole idea of teachers are always been talking about lesson plans. So I now like to say to them, hey, call them lesson designs. You know, because you're designing an experience. Plan seems really boring and it seems templated and kind of, but if you call it a design, you have like a whole other new perspective, right? Any comments on that?
It's a very different process to, you know, when we look at commercial design, product design, is that ultimately the market dictates it, and you know a product, what it looks like, you can feel it in the shop before you purchase it, whereas with an online course you don't often have that option. And yes, you might be able to withdraw from the course before a census date to get your money back, but again, a lot of other students don't have that option. It might be the only university near you or the only course that is what you want to study. So yeah, it's hard to designed for the people that are the target audience, I guess. And also you very rarely as a learning designer get feedback. Most of the
yeah.
I mean, a lot of the university surveys, I'm sure, Hans, or your sort of surveys are more around asking the students, what is, you know, do you feel you achieved the learning outcomes? You know, how was the assessments, things like that. It's very rare that anyone asks, how did you like the pictures? Or, you know, what did you think of the color scheme? You don't get to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think on that, Matt, I think it's a really good point, because I think also students aren't sort of taught or even guided, for a better point, and on how to be critical about design. It's very often, if you ask about, say, you know, the LMS, how did the LMS, they go, well, it had content on it, so therefore it was useful. Or it was easy to find things. Well, how, why, you know, and we don't often get the opportunity to really do those proper in-depth surveys or analysis of why students respond in certain ways to what we put out. Very often it's, just that one question, which might be, it was good or it wasn't. But that doesn't really help us as designers, because is that, for example, is that a problem with Canvas or Moodle, or is it the way that we've designed it? Is it because the student didn't like the colors, which are, you know, say the university brand colors? I worked at Swinburne, which is like bright red and black. So it's really quite aggressive all the time. And so, you know, students might go, oh, I didn't really like it. Is that the colors? So I think it's a really good point that we don't truly get the feedback on what we do. We kind of just have to throw it out there. And so that really draws the point, I think, that it's really important that from the start, we do all the work possible to produce something that is aligned with the people who are going to use our product, and hope that all that preliminary work pays off in the end.
Which is a great segue, actually, because I want to handball it straight to Law here, because what you're kind of touching on, Edmund, is this idea that there are some design principles that we can follow, right? We may not know all the little nuances of that person, but there are some design principles. So it's brilliant to see now the word UX being used in learning and digital, because that's grounded in lots of research, you know. And Law, I'm sure when you were studying graphic design, you were, you know, learning about the human psychological rules to follow, I'd imagine. I'm sure they're named something more eloquent than that. But I will hand to you, Law, to maybe take that as your kind of segue to kind of speak about what that journey was for you, coming from one to another.
So hi, officially, everyone. I'm just gonna go a bit back, like where it all started for me with Oppida. So I started about, I think now almost 3 years as a graphic designer. And I guess at the beginning, I had like only, like I was designing graphics without having this like global vision of what the final end product would look like. Like I didn't have, like the first projects, I didn't have in mind what an LMS looked like, and I was kind of like taking this little piece of the project that I was doing, and I didn't have the whole picture of it. So it was a little bit more difficult for me to put myself in the shoes of the learner and to understand what I was designing for, which I think is indeed very important for graphic design and learning design. And anyway, moving forward, I had the opportunity to move on to graphic design, to learning design, sorry. And I would say that it was a pretty, not an easy transition, but I find a lot of similarities between both roles, especially if you think about the graphic design in the context of designing courses, because it's mostly infographics. So for both roles, it's basically taking raw content, taking information, taking a concept, an idea, and structuring it, whether it's in a visual way or whether it's a core storyboard way. It's the same, I would say it's the same mechanism. It's first taking the idea, trying to see, okay, what is essential here? What do I want to highlight? How can I make it flow? How can I make it understandable for myself first, and then for most people, because sometimes we work on topics that we have no idea about. So for example, at the moment I'm working on psychiatry courses, which are highly technical, and it's a lot of like medical terms, neurobiology things. Like I don't know anything about that, but I think sometimes having this outside perspective, not knowing anything about the topic, and just taking this raw data and being like, okay, what do I do with it? If I don't know anything about it, how can I learn this topic? So this is how I think the transition for me was easy from graphic design to learning design, because I kind of felt like this is pretty much the same job, but it's the learning design is just taking a step back and having a little bit more of the global vision of it. But this is the same mechanism. So I guess this is the main message that I wanted to share with you today. Sorry.
I think just on that, Laura, I think what you're touching on is something brilliant. So people say to me all the time, I don't know how you guys go when you're at dinner parties or with small talk with people, and they say, what do you do? And you go, oh, you know, I'm in education. And then if they ask more questions, I'm like, oh, damn it, I have to try and explain learning design. Shit. So I say, I'm a learning designer. And they go, oh, so what do you like? What type of courses do you build? And I said, any courses. They go, what do you mean any courses? And I say, well, it doesn't matter what the content is. They go, really? And then you have to go through this whole process, right, of explaining that it doesn't really matter. And I think that's what you're touching on there, Laura, is that that's the same skill as a graphic designer, that you can do it with anything. Now, if we think about education, even just 5-10 years ago, would have a teacher told you they could teach anything? No. Teachers thought, or we have always thought, that educators have to be experts in the thing that they're teaching. So our message at Oppida, and it has been for a while now, is that as educators, we've got to change the mindset now to that more design. We would not have put a teacher and a graphic designer together and told everybody they had a very similar job 10 years ago, right? But they do. And that's why we're getting a resistance and we have a skills shortage, I believe, is because we're still trying to bring this new way of looking at things. Like, yeah, you can basically give me anything and I'll make it work, right? A bit of Googling here and there. I'm sure you've had to go down a few rabbit holes about what bipolar really is, Laura, and all the other fancy words I see in the Slack channel. But you know, you need to know enough to be able to communicate it. But that's actually quite a brilliant point, that, you know, you can communicate anything as a learning designer, which is makes you that's why you're a unicorn, Edmund, because you've got superpowers.
Yeah.
Perfect.
About what you were saying earlier, I think, Magda, which was, I mean, for me, what I appreciate actually now being able to also do learning design, and now I'm also doing some like edtech publishing as well into the LMS. So I'm really taking something from like the very first step to finish to the end product, which is very satisfying. But as you said, it's not always easy to translate to someone else how you picture something, but being able to be like in all of these roles and be like, okay, this is how I visualize it. And I mean, I'm a bit of a control freak, I guess, but and I get to be able to do all of these steps to make it look exactly the way I want it to look. Yeah, this is a very satisfying process for me, to really be across the whole timeline of a project and being able to be in everyone's shoes, which is also helpful because, for example, some projects I will be acting as a learning designer. I'm not doing the graphic design, but coming from this background, I know how to communicate with the graphic designer because I know what they need. And the same way, if I do graphic design and I'm working with a learning designer, then I will have it will be easier for me to picture, okay, this is what they need from me now. Like, this is what they're trying to convey. So yeah, and there's a bit of project management to it as well. I think that this is very wide actually role where you get to work with a lot of different people and do a lot of different things. So yeah, I enjoy it so far.
Thank you, Laura. We enjoy working with you. Any comments or questions for Laura specifically about that before I throw to Matt to talk a bit more about publishing?
Did have just one quick comment on it, because I was reminded when Laura was talking about sort of inhabiting you know, different spaces or different jobs within a project. And I was just reminded of the, the learner personas that we look at in the first module. And I think that's a really important way of viewing as a learning designer when you are creating things. The reason why we have learner personas and you do that, work of knowing your students is so that you can inhabit those students when you're looking at your product, because it's not enough to make something that makes sense to you or makes sense to, the learning designer sitting next to you or the graphic designer. It needs to, communicate with everyone, and being able to pretend to be, whoever, Joe Blogs, really does help in producing good quality work.
Yeah.
So just,
Yeah.
Cool.
And,
Okay.
and I
Oh,
would
sorry,
just
go
like,
on.
I guess also just quickly add, like, I had skills from my graphic design role that I could translate into this other learning design role, but I think depending on, like, everyone has a different background, but I think this is because this is such this is a role that goes across so many different things. I think we all have, actually, no matter the background that we all have skills that we can actually translate into that role. And we're not necessarily aware of it, but once we start working on projects, I think we realize the different application that we can have with the skills we already have as well. So it's about learning in your role, but it's also about just like repurposing things that you already know how to do.
Yep. Cool. I'm just going to throw a quick poll up before we move on. Launch the poll. So what is your current level of HTML, CSS understanding is the question. You should be able to open that poll. Oh, somebody create some sexy snakes. Okay. All right. Who thinks CSS is creating sexy snakes? Law.
if you know it well enough, I'm sure you can.
Yeah. That's how that snake game was created on the old Nokia phone, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, that was totally my inspiration. It was last minute. I had to come up with something that started with CSS. Okay, so who's a I'm okay, can read bits and make changes? Yeah, cool. And Edmund, it sounds like you're I can work out when there's a problem and fix it. This is why you're a unicorn again. Right. So really that is the sweet
Stop
spot.
rubbing his ego. I'll have to work with this
I
later.
know,
Come on.
sorry. You have to bring him down tomorrow.
This is perfect. This is a good way to end my day.
Yeah, just getting pumped up. So yeah, I mean, that is really the sweet spot for learning designers, right? Is that you can, it's between the second and third. Like, you don't have to be able to write it, but you should be able to identify potentially a mistake, work with it in some way. So copy and paste it correctly, change a title here and there, understand header 1, header 2, paragraph, blah, blah, blah. And also know what it is, because then you can understand what it is that you need to communicate. But Matt, I'll pass over to you because this is more your space, because I've dropped my knowledge a bit. I'm probably sitting at 2 at the moment. I'm sitting at I know what it is, but I used to be able to fix it. But I've lost my game over the last year or so. But
yeah, I mean, apart from, I think it's back when I was in like year 12, thinking back to like 1997 when me and friends mucking around building our own websites at the start of the whole internet boom, I hadn't really explored HTML for a long time until I became a learning designer again. So it's been really interesting. And I think it is definitely something that, for one, I didn't have to do a course in. I wouldn't recommend anyone really pay any money to go and do a course in it. It's kind of, you have to learn by doing and through practice. I had a lot of support in Oppida, I guess, from our ed tech, Chris as well. So yeah, it's a set of skills that I think I'm certainly proud of, and I'm not sure if anyone feels the same, but when you have a tech related issue, damn, it feels good when you solve it. But damn, it can be frustrating when you can't get it to work. Particularly when you're like, I've done everything in the instructions. Why is it not working? But yeah, that's a good diagram, is a good analysis. So is the other one, I think, on the next slide, which we actually have in the micro credential. If we go back to the the gingerbread person sort of graphic, which comes to the publishing, is you've got that sort of branding on the outside, the homepage, and we know that first impressions sort of count, and then the content within. And I just thought I'll ask everyone, what do you think of this proposition, that people can learn or be educated through bad design? That's fine, but it takes good design to get them to engage with it. What do we think about that? Do you think learners can learn from bad design, and that the key is more to get them to engage with it in the first place? And how do you get them to engage with it?
I guess it depends on you. Oh, sorry, Edmund. No, you go.
No,
you go. I am not going against you. Go first.
No. I think it depends on the definition of bad design. I think there's certain things, like if you had a graphic like we're looking at now, if it's badly designed, then it's incomprehensible. So I don't think people can learn from it. But I think in general, people have managed to learn with bad design. That's, if we think about the way education has been done in the past, we would consider that bad design. Sit down, Timmy, and write the word developing 100 times in a notebook. That is bad design, but it kind of works. So I think there is a play between good design and good education design. And we need to, you got to find that balance. I think engagement is a big part of it, but there is also educational or learning experiences that come from good design as well. So especially graphics, if they're badly designed, they can teach the wrong thing or just be incomprehensible. So,
or for people with like mild kind of like control issues or OCD, they can be very distracting. I remember sitting there one time watching a lecturer at Melbourne Business School with these slides, and all I wanted to do was edit them. Like I couldn't concentrate on what he was saying. I just wanted to take the slide deck and say, give me 2 hours and I'm going to give you back your deck and it's going to be amazing and beautiful. So this is where it can distract people, right? Like it can be something that's like, even though they might be saying fine things, if you're someone who pays attention to that stuff, it can really throw you off. Like, and I've had that many a times. Anyone trying to do a TAE? Exactly. It's like poking your eyes out with a fork, right? And I tried to do a TAE online by some ridiculous provider back in 2017. And like, I legitimately couldn't log in. Like, I don't know how it was so hard, but every time I logged in, I couldn't find anything. It was documents after documents. And it hurt my eyeballs to read them, and I dropped it.
But to your point, Bianca, and that's the teacher in me, I guess, and that was going to be my comment before, maybe a little bit smart-assy, but not meaning to. It just depends what you do with it. You know what I mean? Like if you give it to people and you to rip it apart, to improve it, to like you would do with that slide deck, look at it, what can we do with it? Yeah. Then it's a learning process in itself. But I guess that's not really the point of this exercise.
I was going to say it's the disengagement for me, like what you were saying before, Bianca. I'm just like, I can't cope with this. And I've watched learners, again, in trades and technical, where they're so disengaged with the learning. It could be they're terrible PowerPoints, they're upside down, they're another RTO's image or logo. Like there's all these things that they pick up, and it becomes disengaging for them. And then the teacher is not obviously teaching them anything because the engagement is gone.
But on that, Katerina, as well, you can have the best graphic designer, you can have the best digital designer, best company working with you. If you, bottom line, don't have staff who are prepared to work with it, or be prepared to be a little bit more adventurous, or change their mindsets from, say, 5-10 years ago, when all they were doing is handouts, printouts, and PowerPoints and text, then no matter what you do and how awesome you are at your job, you just can't get through to them. And therefore, the point of it is that you're not reaching the crowds, you're not engaging the students, and it ends up being a disaster because they don't know what to do with the amazingness that you're trying to propose.
But I mean, some of the even the best graphic designs, or the ones that are amazing, if it's not specific to the cohort, it's not a balance between either, because there might be cohorts that need that plain graphics, plain imagery, plain text, and obviously understanding your cohort is so important as we go through this as well.
That actually just reminded me, Matt, of that experience we had last year with a client that will remain nameless, where we went in to look at the current course that they had, that they wanted to uplift and change. And it looked like it had been targeted at like junior high kids. Like there was sort of graphics that looked really childish. The colors were really off, weren't they, Matt? Like it was
very much like Harry Potter almost.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
yeah. The person had decided to use some kind of character throughout, was it? Like,
yeah, I think that's another thing. It looked very stock, and I think we've all seen that. You can certainly tell when a stock image has been used. Yeah, and
where they're all laughing around like a sticky note on the glass, and they're all pointing at the same one.
Trina, we've
there
used
was a
that
lot of
image, okay? We've used that video.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a mental note.
No, I'm kidding.
Continuous improvement, dear Bianca.
Dear Bianca, I don't want to see that sticky note picture.
The sticky note picture again.
No, you're right about knowing the cohort though, because we might have seen that, but coming back to what Edmund and I were discussing right at the start, is a first year straight out of high school might not have seen that.
I don't have seen that.
And so it's a lot of students. Yeah, they don't know what they don't know. It could be the first LMS that they've seen. So we might be like, oh, Canvas is way better than Moodle, but they might be rating Moodle 9 out of 10 because this is the first time they've ever seen something like that. So yeah, and then you throw in, I guess, what I call comparable sort of expectations. Most people now are familiar with, Netflix, Spotify, things like that. So if they're going to listen to a podcast or a video, are they expecting a comparable experience to that? Things with the video, just something simple. I've seen many places where I've helped, where just adding a thumbnail can sort of make a big difference. I know actually with Anzog, I think we might have, I'm not sure if we brought up this example before, but the first round that we did with the units is the thumbnails for the videos didn't have an image of the person's face, the lecturer's face. It was just a title. And then the second round, we actually put a profile bio picture, and just adding that face actually increased the click rates phenomenally. So does being explicit about how long it is. We also always include the length.
And now you have people walking in the woods and walking their dogs and talking.
Yeah, the dog butt.
The defining moment for our careers.
Holy moly.
I was going to say before, Edmund, you made a comment, and I can't remember what specifically it was about. It's about feedback. When I was at RNCA, they didn't hold back. I had emails about, Katrina, you're not having a chef hat. It looks like the ridiculous clouds that some idiot chefs wear. I would get feedback about the imagery that we used that weren't Australian chefs or weren't Australian hospitality. It was and it was, I think we did a course in 2.5 weeks for the COVID thing, like I said. And we were getting brutal feedback. And it was fair. It was brutal because it's hospitality and they don't hold back. But it was really interesting because it was my kind of first step into it, and I wasn't kind of expecting that much feedback on a course that was actually helping industry. So I've had I had polar opposite. They're not wearing the right hat, Katrina, and I was like, you've got to be joking.
Yeah.
But that was a huge learning curve for me, to not only look at the imagery that the learning designer was building, but it was the whole experience and making sure that it was Australianified. And that we didn't have any American accents. We didn't have any of that stuff, because it really got picked up really quickly. Again, this is why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you try building videos for the Department of Defense where you can't use any videos outside of their pool.
That's right.
Videos, which is like a handful of ones that may be appropriate with people sitting at a computer, but you can't use any stock. You can't use a single thing. So you've got to just think about words that you can throw on the page. You got to put just graphics that you design. It's been a very hard post-production process.
Yeah, I can imagine.
When you're restricted, but yeah, it's definitely a problem. The B-roll problem and the stock photo problem. Yeah, if I didn't know what to do with my life, I probably would start taking photos and video, because I reckon
videography.
Market, yeah. All right, I just want to throw to this lovely little trade-offs one, and I'm going to throw to you, Matt, and then we'll go to show and tell, because I just think this is super important, because we were getting to that kind of point before with this idea of trade-offs around, we're always, as designers, we've got our parameters, and we've got what we know about the learner, we've got the whatever system we're in, but we're always kind of making design trade-offs and experience trade-offs. So Matt, did you want to talk more to this graphic and also this LXP idea?
Yeah, so the one on the left was something I did with our graphic designer, I guess trying to use an analogy of SCORM, and it's predominantly, I guess, in the corporate market SCORM's being used, and I know at Oppida we're not a huge fan of it. SCORM's quite outdated, doesn't have a lot of sort of longevity in it, and it requires specialized software that a lot of organizations sort of don't have themselves. So I've kind of described it as being the SCORM packages on a DVD, and that then gets put into the DVD player, which is the authoring tool, I guess, which would be like Articulate or Storyline. And then that authoring tool then sends that signal of the content through to the actual screen, which is your LMS. So I was trying to sort of highlight it through that. But it's interesting now, I guess, as SCORM's sort of gone the wayside, we're seeing things like Rise. And I know that Rise 360, you've been using that a lot recently, Law. As a graphic designer, do you think, and it's called a rapid authoring tool, I guess, because it's so easy and it does a lot of automated things for you. It's almost like the Canva of learning design. If everyone sort of used Canva. Do you feel that's a good thing for learning designers, that learning designers don't really need any design or creative skills because they could just use Rise and it does it all for them? Or do you still have to understand the principles behind good design when using something like Rise?
I think it's a very easy, intuitive platform to use. So I think anyone can pick it up and create something that would be probably better than with another platform. But personally, I find it useful to have this, like, I guess, visual background as well, because it's not only, I would say it's not only about making things pretty when you think about like visual design, it's also about making it it's also about the how do you say that, the experience itself, like how it's flowing, how it's like easy to use. And so yes, you want it to be looking good, but you also want it to be intuitive for the learners. So I mean, I love Rise, but I think, like, for me, coming from like this graphic background, I think helps me
make it better,
get like the final product that I would want to see. Like,
definitely I can notice the difference. I've seen a course put in Rise by a learning designer that doesn't have a graphic design background, and I've seen one that Laura does, and she takes it to a whole other level because she can see something that they don't necessarily see, right?
It's in details, because that's the thing as well. Like sometimes, on a graphic, like there are things that you pick up as like someone looking at a graphic that you wouldn't know what it is, but something is going to feel off or it's going to feel right. And it's the same for a platform. Like, for example, in Rise, you can like adjust the paddings like between the sections and everything, and that's something that I always do, to have something that's consistent. And I think if you don't think about it and like it's inconsistent, it's the experience is going to feel a little bit different. Not that people will say like, oh, that's because the padding was off, but I think on the eye that will make a difference.
Katrina, did you want to?
This is one of my like burning questions, is about the Rise Articulate, the SCORM files, because I feel like, and obviously because we're in this space, I will go into a course and be like, oh my God, it's Rise Articulate, and here we go again. And so for me, it's understanding how to make that experience, because I'm already kind of have this preconception when I'll open a course, and I can't even remember which one I did the other day, and I was like, oh, I can tell they dropped that and dragged that and dragged that. And it's now about that upping the ante with it, I think is one of my, Matthew, you said before that the like SCORMs are out, but rises are still produced as a SCORM file.
I guess it's a different, like it's moved to HTML5, I guess. So
yeah,
and tin
yeah,
can.
it's just a
export it.
different standard, but same principles, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So the reason
sometimes
we were-
Rise can also be online as well. It doesn't have to be a file. Like
we
it
were
can be
anti-SCORM for a long time because we didn't want any of this crap about only being on a Macintosh, Articulate 360 licenses, holding files on desktops. Like that just sounded like a flipping nightmare for a remote company. We were like, we can't do that, right? And also, so Rise changed the game when it was cloud-based and much more user-friendly, and you know, because I think you need a certain amount of training to kind of use that 360. Like it's not the most intuitive thing. Like it can get quite complex in there when you're trying to move slides around and branch scenarios and all of that. So the reason why we've started to relent on our little SCORM no is because Rise is becoming easier to embed. But the one trade-off with it, which I will say to the end I'll never like and I'm never happy about, is the fact that it's not as agile, because it's locked down. That's the problem with SCORM, is that you have to save the file.
That's right.
Right. And then you have to put it somewhere, and you can't just go and edit anything. So recently we had to send off something to a client to be put into Thinkific.
Yep.
Right. But we hadn't finished all the videos. So lucky we use Wistia though. So we could open up a video, put in a placeholder, get the URL, put it into the Rise to then go and export it, right?
Yep.
But that's just an extra step that no one wants to have to think about, right? If we were just in Canvas like we are with you guys in Anzoc, we just put the video in when it's done, right? And we can move and change those words. And so if someone comes back and says, oh, there's a spelling mistake on page 4, we still didn't get it in the 50,000 edits we did, right? With Rise, you're stuffed. It's in there until you do a next export, which is why I've always not really liked it. But because it's now a very affordable thing to integrate into some of these platforms, and it's becoming something that, you know, obviously can look really amazing and very responsive, we've started to kind of use it.
Okay. And so building on that, with Rise Articulate is the assessment component. So if you're actually wanting to pull out accessible components for it, to be able to offer, again, a micro-credential link to a digital badge, and there's an assessment, it actually is almost impossible. And we use Thinkific as well. So you kind of in a SCORM, out of a SCORM, in a SCORM. And so, I just, it was an interesting comment. So I was like, oh, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, no, we feel you. This is the trade-off thing.
Like
always, you know, and because we just for the first time recommended it to a client, but we recommended it with the help of Learning Vault, because we knew that they could set up the Thinkific instance and that we could do the Rise part, and we've sort of handed to them because they know how to integrate the two really well. And the reason we thought that was working for this client was because we sort of needed to move fast. They didn't already have an LMS. They didn't want to spend 20, 30 grand in LMS because the product's new. So this was kind of like, it just really kind of felt right for this particular instance. Look, the proof will be in the pudding once we get some data on it. But it's definitely, you are dealing with two systems.
Right? No, agreed. Thank you.
No worries. Anything else you want to say on that, Matt?
No, I'll just bring it back, I guess, to the actual microcred. And as you are moving through, it's module 4, where we get into learning designers as designers and the learning outcomes. So if you think of, these aren't just learning outcomes, but I guess job roles that a learning designer would traditionally do, it's to publish a digital learning experience that prototypes a learner experience and demonstrates effective use of a rich content editor and bespoke HTML code. So our Cook pathway involves doing a wireframe homepage, and I guess a lot of designs start with a simple wireframe, which can just be a simple sketch. And then our second assignment for that module is we actually set up a series of pages in the Canvas instance, which are editable by students. So you'll eventually, I haven't set them up yet, but you will find a page that is labeled as your name, and you'll actually be able to go in there and you'll be able to play around if you've never experienced Canvas before or used a rich content editor or switched it to HTML mode. There's an opportunity for you to go in there and play around and build a little bit of content. We're not asking for a full course or anything fantastic. It's more just a little bit to demonstrate those skills, and you'll find more about those in the assessment brief. And then when you move into module 5, there's a bit of an overlap because one of the assignments for module 5 is to write a brief or an email to a graphic designer. I think we're always fortunate in our roles if we do have a graphic designer on board. We've talked about the restraints and the challenges around designing engaging sort of content, but it's good if you don't have to worry about that and you can handball it off to a graphic designer. So if you are lucky to have that, that's one of the things we simulate. And so that's I'll throw up an example here, Bianca, if you can go to the first show and tell.
Show and tell from last week.
Yeah, so this is one recently that Laura and myself collaborated on, and basically I was designing a course. The SME sort of in the storyboard had put that there's a new set of standards that a set of processes are being, I guess, assessed on or critiqued on, and all they had, I guess, was a list. So I think there's 7 there. So if you can imagine on the storyboard, all I see is a list of 7 dot points with those exact 7 headings. And it was kind of a bit of a blur to me as I'm reading them because I couldn't differentiate between them. They all seemed sort of so similar, I guess. So I thought, well, a learner is that's just going to go straight past them. They're just going to see a list of seven phrases. So how can we make that into a graphic? And yeah, maybe Laura, can we harken back to the brief? I know we use Trello. So just to give you an idea, we create a Trello card. I assign it to Laura in the correct column, and from memory I probably would have just said, Laura, I've got this list of 7 topics. We need to think about how we can present it in a graphic. I think I did I gave like an example. I think I found
so that's actually interesting because that's an interesting example because I think it comes to also this idea of co-creation, because you basically first, Matt, created a Trello card and being like, okay, we need a graphic to illustrate those 7 themes. And I had nothing else than those 7 themes without the context of the course or anything. And I have no idea what this is. I have no idea how to differentiate them or how to I wasn't visualizing it. So I went back to Matt and asked, okay, do you have definition for them or do you have more context to provide? And I guess that's when Matt had, sorry, my cat, thought about it again, and you came up, Matt, with okay, we could make it look like a, how do you call that?
Dashboard.
A dashboard.
Yeah.
And just when you said that, and I think you gave a screenshot of I don't know, an example you found somewhere. And then I was, okay, I'm visualizing it. Okay, I can do this. And just having being able to discuss and have this discussion about it and both come together and have this common reflection that really helped me as the graphic designer, because the initial brief, I could not have produced that, but just being able to have Matt thinking about it again and giving just a little hint on where to go, that helps. So sometimes it's not just you need the perfect brief at the beginning. I think it's more about talking about it. And I've had that a few times with the AB as well, one of our senior learning designer. We've had a few times when she would just drop Trello cards and we would hop on the call and go over it, and then that was so much easier to just discuss it together.
Yeah. So what are some of the elements that are good in a brief or in the discussion? I mean, there's some boring elements in there as well. Like you've always got to talk about the resolution, I guess, or the specs. The image sizes always help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, those things, like technical specifications, but then I would say like what is important is what is the message that you're trying to convey? Like, is it, because it's not just about making something pretty, it's about like trying to translate a message visually. So what are you trying to say? If you're able to give a bit of context to your graphic designer, then that will be much easier for them to translate your idea, you know. And like, as you said, like nobody can read your mind, but if you are able to at least give them the main idea and then let them do, like, let them take their creativity and turn it into something. So don't be too specific either. Like, I mean, unless it's something like very plain and boring, but sometimes it's better to let them do what they are good at and just tell them, this is the idea I'm trying to, like, this is what I'm trying to say, and take it and do something with it, rather than trying to micromanage and being like, okay, I want this here and I want this in a box, and like, this is, I think this, like, because then, okay, they will do whatever you want, but you don't know what they could have done if you would have let them just a little bit more like creative freedom, you know. So
that's the biggest tension I've found working with creatives now at Contract as well, is like, okay, so this is what I'm thinking, but you guys can take it, like, go take it and do what you want to do with it. Like, this is, you know, there's sort of sometimes less is more actually with the right person. Especially like Laura and Alison, they don't need a lot in our team. They kind of get it, you know, pretty quickly. So.
I did ask Laura though to model the person on there on me, but she obviously got lost in translation. She did it. I must have read it as moi and did it on yourself.
Yeah,
but,
very self.
Yeah.
But I think also that's very similar, I guess, Bianca, when you look at our rich media process with videos, is that our video scripts, we don't just hop in straight away to the script and the storyboard. We actually have, like, it's like the constructive alignment at the top of it around what is the learning outcome of this video? What are the key points? What do we want the viewer to come away with at the end? And that's important to have at the top for the videographer and those involved in the creation of the video to have as well.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand the point that you're trying to get across. Yeah.
Did you want to talk to this one as well, Matt?
That's just another one that we did recently. Just that was turned into a hotspot, I guess. So just a way of using, I guess, tips. This was a course that was very much tip sort of based around sort of compliance activities, you know, work health and safety, things like that. And so, yeah, just using something like that, turning it into a hotspot in H5P, just added a bit of a different level of engagement. And that was created. So I think at Law, we have an account with Envato. So we were talking about stock images before, but whilst this was a stock image, like, we could actually download the Illustrator or the Photoshop file, so at least we could rebrand it into the client's colors and
so we grab
elements those. Actually, it's all different elements from different graphics, but it's just easy to play with and recreate new content.
Yeah.
And these ones are an example of the characters that we build sometimes. If we know we're going to do a lot of media with a client and there's going to be a lot of graphics, we'll pick we'll actually build out characters to use in the examples. This helps with clients too that don't really want to use a lot of stock. So we can have these animated characters. So this was for Department of Defense, I remember, isn't it, Matt?
Yep.
This is because we knew we weren't going to be able to use stock images. So these are all corporals and majors and stuff. They all have names and, you know, like backgrounds and stuff. And we use them inside to kind of go, for example, Corporal Hawkins does blah, 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 blah. And, you know, there's Corporal Hawkins doing his thing. Slightly lame, but when you've got nothing else to work with, you've sort of got to go down this path because, you know, we can't have videos that are just like straight person at camera. It just doesn't work. Like, you know, so we've got to do what we can.
Yeah, and ultimately with a lot of videos, you do want to tell a story. Like, you just don't want a talking head explaining a series of processes and steps. So yeah, creating those personas. And if you have done persona work at the beginning of a learning design process, you can customize them, make sure they're diverse and cover a wide range of characteristics of the audience. And then that helps make things a bit more authentic as well when you come to the creation of rich media.
Yeah. Okay, well, Q&A time. Is there anything you guys want to say, ask about the course itself, or wisdom bombs you want to drop on us before we wrap up today?
I just have a practical question, because I am slightly behind with assessments. I mean, I submitted a bit today, but I'm only at unit module 2. What's the deal with how long can we just like?
You've got another, you've got 4 months, so you've got 16 weeks, right? We facilitate for 8, but we leave you in for an extra 2, right? We just stop hassling you every Monday after the 8 weeks, right? But you're still welcome to come to these, but they just won't be put in your inbox and like reminded of, right? So we sort of we're testing this model. You guys can give us feedback on it. But we're trying to say, like, if you want to be accountable to us, we'll tell you every Monday where you should be so that you kind of get that thing. But we also know everybody's juggling. So you can have that open space to submit when, you can compile it, right? Down the track. So
perfect. Yeah. Okay. Sounds awesome. And so, for example, like Edmund and I missed because we were both separately, but both sick. And so can we like go to that session that we missed with the next cohort? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you can go in the next round as well. Yeah, if you want to go in the next round, because they're all going to like a carousel. So yeah. And so we're just working on the page actually now that's going to drop into every cohort, which will have every single LGP live for the rest of the year, right? Cool. So you can see what day and time it is, put it in your own calendar and click on the link, and it will have every single recording. You have another page with all the recordings. So you're like, oh, okay, I've already been to Learning Designers. I don't need to go that one again. I mean, we'll try and change it up every time, but there will be some repeats, like, we'll probably recycle some slides, the talking points, but obviously the conversation will be different. But yeah, we're hoping to make it as fluid as it can be, but also not give you free range, because then no one will ever finish anything. Because we know learners don't need an open enrollment. It doesn't work.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay, good. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
No worries. Anything else?
No, not for me.
No, I've only just started, so I'm sure there'll be questions next time.
No worries. Yeah. Go forth and design, I should say. Get your paintbrushes out. Get in your flow. We have Flow Fridays at Oppida, which means no one can take meetings, which is a great day to do creative things because no one's interrupting you. So maybe you should implement a flow afternoon or a flow morning if you need to design something.
Good.
Amazing.
That's a great idea.
It's fantastic, isn't it? I break it sometimes and then I'm like, why did I break my rule?
I know.
Because we're human and we like rules, but then we don't. And then I think rules are meant to be broken. So it's all very confusing. But yes.
And also you're fitting in with 25 other people that have got calendars as well.
Yeah, I know. You guys are different. You love a good meeting. I mean, we're a startup. We don't do meetings much. We try not to meet at all. We just like to chat and leave voice notes and send memes to each other and then meet every now and then.
We unfortunately do all that as well on top of
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Just double the workload.
Double the work.
Yeah. Anyway. Awesome. All right, thank you so much. Great conversation. Thanks, Laura, for joining us as our guest graphic designer tonight. Thanks always, Matt, for being my great sidekick. Or are you Batman tonight and I'm Robin? I don't know. One of the two. All right, see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.